another episode of Relational Leadership, where we try to bring tips and some value to you in your everyday life, whether you are a CEO of a Fortune 500 company or a mom trying to lead all of your kids and get them where they need to be. We try to give you something that you can take away each time that you join us. My name is Stephanie Clements.
And I am Shawn Dawley. And today, as part of our indefinite series of leadership topics, we're going to be talking about self-awareness. That magical ingredient that we tend to take for granted sometimes, because in a world that is so busy, that demands so much of our attention, we sometimes forget to pay attention to what's happening, in our head, in our heart. And we're going to get into some of those things that can create obstacles to being self-aware, and then what we can do to fix that.
Yeah. You'd be surprised to find out that most people have very little self-awareness. Being self-aware is really kind of seeing yourself through the eyes of how others see you. We may think we know ourselves, but if you were put on the spot and say, what are your goals? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What are the areas you struggle in? Most people would be at a loss to answer you.
Yeah, it typically is. You know what? Let me get through the day. I've got 14 open items on my desk at work. I've got a kid who just told me that their science fair project is due tomorrow morning. I just had my check engine light come on the way to work. I got a call from my mom that says she's having some trouble with her caretaker.
I just want to survive the day.
That's right.
That's my goal.
That's right. Like 5-year plan. Let me get through the next 5 minutes. Yeah.
But you also see people where maybe there's a lot of drama, a lot of conflict in their life. They don't understand why it keeps happening, but they don't look at what they're doing either to feed it or allow it in their lives, So some of our own problems that we have, we don't see in ourselves.
Yeah. Stephanie, I told you that in confidence.
I know. Well, we're going to get it out here, work it out for you, Shawn.
Yeah.
So it's funny because as I was looking through, and I have certainly dealt with this as being a business owner, people overstate their talents and their abilities. And certainly as owning a handyman and remodeling company, I have had people come and say, oh, I can do all of this. And you get in there and do it, and they really don't know what they're doing.
Sure.
And, so that's just like one of the areas. But I read the people who have the least amount of talent and abilities are the ones who have no clue that they do.
Yeah, there can sometimes be this inverse relationship. And, the flip side, some people may be listening and they're thinking, you know what, I battled with a lack of confidence for so many years, and I feel like you all are telling me to don't overestimate our ability. And being able to kind of pin yourself down on those two lists of strengths and weaknesses, you need not sacrifice your confidence to maintain a mature, healthy awareness of your own limitations. So I like to think that I'm a relatively confident person. I've never changed the transmission in my vehicle, but maybe with some YouTube tutorials, I could get through it. But if you said, hey, Shawn, would you want to climb into the cage with that professional MMA fighter right now? I'd say, well, no, because, oh, aren't you confident? Like, I am realistic, and I recognize that I would be ill-equipped to do that, right? So it's a moving target, right? But to your point, it can be frustrating sometimes when you deal with folks and you think, my goodness, you are exceedingly off in your own estimation of your ability.
So, so to kind of give some ideas of how you can become more self-aware, I thought about, a lot of people, we love reality TV and whatever, but that's not, their real life. But if you were able, if there were a silent, cameraman somewhere that you didn't know, and you had to start watching the video of yourself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You would learn a whole lot about yourself that you have no clue that you really do and how you act. Because again, we don't see it through the lens of other people.
Right.
That's not especially realistic to be able to do. I did have I used to be in banking and go and do these seminars and public speaking. And we brought in a new person,
Mm-hmm.
and supposedly it had years and years of public speaking
Okay.
background. So, but he got up and he went, well, now we're here today because we're gonna talk about, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is painful.
Yeah.
And the whole time he kind of did that, like, and
Yeah.
just really lost people. So I mentioned to him, maybe it would be good. I think we need to film you doing that. And he was immediately, I don't need that. I've been doing this for years. I know
Oh,
what
boy.
I'm doing.
Yeah, you've been doing it badly for years, it
Right.
sounds like.
So, that's where seeing ourselves helps us see.
And goodness gracious, is that hard to do? So, as a professional public speaker who does keynotes and lots of front of the room presentations to crowds large and small, wherever possible, I typically will have a videographer or just maybe even set up a couple of cameras myself.
Yeah.
And when I go back, it is hard to watch yourself, no matter how good you are.
Well, even our podcasts, sometimes I'm always nervous. I mean, I think that we've done, but I always I don't think I want to watch it myself.
Yeah. Well, it definitely takes a bit of maturity on your part to, put yourself, under the microscope when you're the one that's, and again, it's extremely easy to just kind of want to gloss over things like that, but it's definitely not something.
Grab this light that we just dropped.
It's not something that I think you can dismiss. It's funny you talk about having this fictitious camera crew, follow you around when you are going through some sort of maybe when you feel like you're lacking that awareness, and how would this play out if I was being filmed? That's funny you say that, because in some of the modules in the leadership lectures that I put on where I talk about emotional intelligence, I'm talking about self-awareness. I'll talk about, these instances where in a communication that becomes a disagreement, which becomes an argument, which becomes a full out, battle, typically you'll recognize that at some point in there, both of us went past the point where we were ever going to be able to arrive at anything upon which we would agree. Like sometimes you get into a disagreement and you realize in retrospect, okay, around this point in the conversation, quote unquote, neither of us was really listening to the other. And one of the tools, some might call it a trick, that I try to impart to people is, okay, imagine that you are being videoed, and later that week, they're going to show that video to your friends, to your family, to your coworkers. How would you like them to see you on the IMAX screen? And sometimes that can cause you to get out of yourself just enough to think, okay, you know what? It's not enough that I'm saying what I think are the right things. The manner by which I am saying it matters as well.
Sure.
And when you can envision, like, there's that camera crew has got the bright light on you, sometimes that can cause you to kind of at least get into character and make an honest attempt at comporting yourself in a way that you would be, pleased with.
Well, another way that we can get self-awareness is really asking for feedback. My granddaughter and I play a game. She usually will say, hey, why don't you be me and I'll be you? So I just start off by going, hey, Nana, are we going to go do this? What are we going to do for fun? What are we going to eat tonight? What are we going to, and she goes, I don't know yet. So, but it just gives each of you a glimpse at how they see you. And so doing something like that can really give you some insight also. Yeah. So whether you sit and take just a trusted person, none of us want criticism, but constructive criticism is what helps us grow.
That's right.
And again, become more self-aware. So even if you can do something like that, that I want to, you want to know how I see you, I want to know how you see me, and we role play each other. That can give you a lot of insight.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to write that down. That's a good, I've never thought about that technique to basically flip the script.
Yeah.
And because it's interesting how much you'll have the other person pegged.
Yeah.
And then in turn, Okay, once you've dished it out, you get ready.
Yep.
Because they're going to bring it right back.
But you'll have some people go, I don't do that. Well, you kind of do. And so
maybe the next level is you role play in front of like a small audience of people that know
right,
you both.
Right.
And then when you say, I don't do that, you look over and there's like
Everybody's
4 or 5
like,
people like, you kind of do, right?
So, so that can be, it can be a good team building exercise also to have people say, all right, I'm going to get up and play so-and-so,
Yeah,
and
it can be.
It can be, but, make sure that.
If you got some thin-skinned individuals, it could probably go sideways real quick.
It can be there.
In pilot training pilot training was about 2 years long from start to finish. Once you factored in, all the different planes you flew, and then you sprinkle in like water survival and, POW resistance training and all that crap. At the end of every sortie, you set through a debrief with the instructor that was with you, and everything is graded. I mean, there's a bubble sheet that has about 50, 60, 70 items on it. And after what you may have thought was a pretty good sortie, you got to sit there and listen to an older, wiser, smarter, more experienced person deconstruct. I mean, line by line by line as they go through the entirety from the time you walked out of that jet until you put it to bed and walked back in. And, you have to, as a matter of survival in that program, thicken your skin up pretty quick.
Sure.
Because that's not the time to start quibbling and arguing, because the instructors in pilot training, they hold all the power over you.
Right.
And it wouldn't take much for them to say, you know what, I'm just going to start grading you harder and you'll be out of here by the end of the week, right?
Sure.
And so you go through that. And I'll tell you, I was a fairly sensitive and defensive guy, going into that, like relative to the general adult young male population. Like, I will freely admit, I struggled with criticism.
Yeah.
But the necessity of that environment dictated that, well, you better figure it out real quick. So later in my professional life, when I was a commander, I made sure, okay, now there's nobody in the building who's giving me feedback every day. I need to surround myself with like my second in command and senior staff members who can pull me aside and say, dude, your baby is ugly.
Yeah.
Like you need,
right. You need to work on this.
Yeah. And so one thing that I figured out pretty early on was that as a leader, if you don't have people to tell you when you are acting or behaving a certain way, it may be too late before you figure it out.
Sure. Well, one of the things that you can do, in your professional life or with friends, finding out one thing that you need to work on. Don't overload yourself with, a dozen things and then you're like, okay, I just suck. Right. Yeah, But, finding one thing that you need to work on and taking time and just daily practice. And, maybe it's meditation. Maybe you get into, therapy. There's nothing, every athletic player needs a coach. Even as good as they are, they need to be better. Sometimes just doing therapy a couple times a month to work on those one things, that'll help also. Other things, you may need to do are the personality tests, which we've talked about before. Those are really, really good at starting to open up. And as it describes you, and once you've done 2 or 3 of them, you will get a really good idea of what your personality is and where some of your strengths and weaknesses are. And then again, just choosing one of those to really be mindful, meditate, study, whatever you need to do to kind of get better in that area.
Yeah. So self-awareness is yet another one of those things in our life that actually can be improved. We sometimes think that, well, based on my personality disposition, I will always be this way or that way. And to be sure, part of how we're wired will always incline us towards certain dispositions. However, self-awareness is something that can be built. I got some great feedback one time. I was on a deployment. I was the director of operations. So I was like, say, the second in command. And a younger guy, young, everything's relative, right? He was probably 32. He was probably 28. he said, and it was great feedback. He didn't know he was giving me feedback. He said, man, it's usually pretty obvious when you're pissed about something. And he wasn't trying to insult me. And I can't even remember the context and how that came up. But I tell you what, unbeknownst to him, that stopped me in my tracks because I thought, my gosh, how many times have I been justifiably angry about something?
Mm-hmm.
We're human. We are allowed to be angry.
Sure.
And maybe I was having a stern conversation with somebody that my anger was justified and I was unloading on them in a professional, constructively critical way. But then when that conversation was over, I leave that room and then I'm walking around not self-aware that I'm projecting that anger and
that
hostility.
tension, yeah.
And now I've just put a sour mood over the entire operation.
Sure.
Because I was not aware that my visage, just my posture, maybe my hands were clenched. And so again, that self-awareness is something that we just can work on. We can improve,
You can. I mean,
but it takes effort.
You have to want to grow.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean,
you got to want to.
There is that ignorance is bliss, but it's not so blissful for those around you.
No.
So,
no.
Every single one of us has something that we need to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And, until we reach perfection, I'm really close, but I'm not there yet. So I'm,
Yeah. I've been keeping score as the months have worn on of, all the areas,
right.
Perfected. There's a couple areas left, but
still a couple areas left, but yeah. And I'm totally self-aware, right?
Yeah.
So,
and our self-awareness is not a finite absolute value. I mean, based on what's going on in our life, our own awareness can be increased or decreased because, again, we're not Vulcans, we're not Spock. And whenever we are engaged in anything that is eliciting bad and good emotions, it can kind of alter our ability to be perceptive. I've got a couple minute story I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
That's all right. I won't try to eat up too much of the time, but probably this is a good example of how a lack of self-awareness can really have consequences. So I was a young aviator, and probably I would say the most dangerous airport on the planet is in the capital city of Tegucigalpa, Honduras. Very short runway, surrounded on all sides by mountains. Extremely difficult approach. It's hard to get in. It's hard to put that plane down. And it has claimed a significant number of civilian aircraft over the years. Google it, and you'll Google Tegucigalpa Airport pictures, and you'll just see wreckage after wreckage.
You might want to spell that for us.
Let me come back to that. It starts with a T. So early in my career, we were going in there, and sometime prior to us, another plane like mine had gone in, and they were too high, too fast, weren't going to be able to make that first one. So kind of like parallel parking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ain't got it. Let me just back out and try it again.
Right.
So the pilot made the right decision. He did what's called a go around. I'm going to go around, came back. He comes back once again, too high, too fast, and decides, heck with it, I'm going to put this plane down. So Reader's Digest version of the story, he touches down too fast, about halfway down what's already a short runway, throws the engines into reverse, stands on the brakes, can't decelerate in time, goes off the end of the runway, crashes, a few people died, plane's destroyed, goes up in fire. Now, that pilot was trained, experienced, smart, educated, better than me, right? So it was not that he lacked intelligence or training or experience, but in that moment, he may have been like in a heightened emotional state and thought, gosh, I'm not going to go around a third time. Because heaven forbid somebody makes fun of him at the bar, right, or somebody calls him, a nickname down the road. And so he may be, I'm speculating.
Still overestimated his ability.
And perhaps wasn't quite fully aware that he was in what I think may have been a heightened emotional state and committed to a decision that ended up having tragic consequences.
Sure.
Now, what does that mean? Okay, if you're not a pilot flying into Tegucigalpa, Honduras, does that have relevancy? I would say it does, because how many times in the business world have you been in a heightened emotional state and made a decision, did something, said something, and then after the fact, thought to yourself, my goodness, I knew better than that.
Yep.
I'm smarter than that.
Yep.
I shouldn't have done that. So, we are all susceptible.
Absolutely. So, there are things, and I try to be self-aware in this. There are certain things that I grew up knowing that just irritated me that my mom would do, right? And I'm never going to do that. I'm not. And some of those things have carried out. I mean, it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't like that. I still don't
Yeah.
like it. But it'll come out of my mouth and I'll say something. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did it.
Yeah.
So
like every woman's nightmare. I've
become my
my
mother. But, I love her to death. But, there are just a few of those things that I thought, no, I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that, And so, it's an area that maybe because I've concentrated so much that I don't want to, I catch it almost immediately.
You're
And
on
then
guard.
then I tell my kids, I'm like, I'm sorry, no, I didn't mean that. Well, let me find another way to, to rephrase this or whatever. But, when you know that you do something and you keep getting those, not the best result that, not the results you really want. And you're like, but you can't figure out how to change that. That is where, like, maybe it is a coach, maybe it is really replaying all of those and concentrating on each situation that you start thinking, when I get in this situation again, I want to make sure, because we have muscle memory for our brain as well as our emotions, or, and things that trigger. So if you have that and you've got that, just that one thing that just keeps coming up, that trigger, you've got to deal with that trigger, and you have to recognize that it's not everybody else it's their fault for pushing that trigger button. You've got to contain that trigger in yourself. Because if it's out there, it's on your shoulder or whatever, it's going to get pushed, and you're going to keep dealing with it.
I think that is well said, because you don't have the ability to immunize yourself against the things that could rile you up, right? So when you have something and you do something, say something, and after the fact you think, oh my goodness, I really wish I could go back in time and not do that. Well, the next best thing is to take stock and think to yourself, okay, what was it about the circumstances of that situation that resulted in me having my intellect subordinated to my emotions and then doing something that I regretted? And then maybe can I be on guard against that next time? And I think the trick in there is acknowledging what it was that maybe pushed you over the edge, but then going one step deeper and think, why is that?
Well, one of the things, on my own front, I've had, a handful of people in my life. I'm pretty easygoing. It takes a lot to get me angry and upset and to really show that anger. But I've had a handful of people, that have come through my path in life that can literally make me lose it. And I don't like to think that, that's me, but obviously it's in there. There are people who can bring it out.
Sure.
And, part of that is being aware that, okay, it is in me, and I don't react the way I should when those kind of people are in my life, but 99.9% of the time I'm easygoing. So the majority of people don't do that to me. And so, not only is it that I realize it's in me and I want to work on it, I also work to not put myself in situations where it happens. And so I make a decision about the kind of people I want to be around also.
That's right. There's so much wisdom in that, I just said earlier that you cannot completely immunize yourself from circumstances that at some point couldn't irritate you. However, to the extent you can avoid or at least mitigate the number of occasions, that's wise. I mean, if there are types of things or people that like, well, this is oil and vinegar. Well, don't,
Yeah, let's not mix
don't
it.
go do
And
that.
yeah.
Right? Like if there's like a genre of music that you hate, you wouldn't play that on the radio.
Right, right.
So if there are ways that you can just avoid certain things, that at least allows you to maintain the capacity so that when you find yourself in a position where it's unavoidable, you're not already depleted.
Right.
Because if you've had 10 things just bother you throughout the day, it could be the 11th that causes you to finally just kind of
Sure.
blow up. So try to avoid the first, 7 or 8 of those and you might be okay.
Well, we're getting lots of hellos on here, so we appreciate it. Yeah, barely.
So for those who aren't seeing what we're seeing, the screen is set up so we can see people commenting and asking questions. Luckily, Stephanie must have 20/20 vision because without my cheaters, I don't hardly even recognize my face on that screen over there.
Well, the problem is I can't read them up close. It is far enough that I can do anyway. But but it's not always working on the negatives. Sometimes it's that we need to build better habits and and better things. And so those are, you want to get in and you're going to have to go in and do, try new things and figure out where you're good and then where the weaknesses are in that, because there could be, skill sets that are really required in your job that you just, again, we said, if you're not aware of what you're lacking, then, and the people with the least amount of skill tend to be not knowing that they have it,
Yeah.
But realizing that you don't know how to do everything, that you don't know it all. And, I own a remodeling company, but I don't know how to do drywall. I have to, but could I learn it? I could if I wanted to. And, it takes practice. It would take me trying. Let's see where I excel, see where I don't, and then work on that. So, there may be things that you want to help with furthering your own abilities, and that just is going to take daily practice. And so, recognizing where you may be lacking and where you can get stronger.
That's great, Stephanie. And again, it starts with something you said earlier, which is you have to want to change. Right?
Sure.
And I'm not trying to make light of something serious, but they often talk about people that are in recovery. That one of the initial steps is the recognition of a problem.
Sure.
Right? And so again, I don't want anybody to think that I'm making light, but I think there's some parallels in that. There are things about us that we might get pretty defensive about. And typically when we get defensive about them, it's because on some level we know they're true.
Sure.
So like I will, be transparent and say, I used to really struggle with anger. And when people would say, man, you got an anger problem. No, I don't.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to go outside and solve it. Nah. So, at some point I can't point to the day on the calendar when I finally just, I've got some pent up aggression in here. But I do know that I was blessed that there were some people who loved me enough to say, you've got a problem with this. Right. And so again, what I would challenge those of you who are listening that are leaders is find somebody that you respect, that, has your best interest, that likes you, that loves you, that respects you, and have that honest conversation and, say, hey, are there aspects of my personality that sometimes you find unattractive, off-putting, ugly? If you can't say it yourself, have you heard other people say things about me? And then you just need, you need to filter, because some of it could be, just hate, that people are putting on top of you. That's not true. But if they say something that really bothers you, that you think, there may be an element of truth in this, that right there can become what you're talking about. Is like, that is what you want to work on. Yeah. That is what you want to focus on. And that is the only way that we're all going to get better.
Well, recognizing the problem is the first step. But, I can remember several years ago being on a 10-hour drive, which is a great time to reflect and, all of the things. So,
were you by yourself?
I was by myself. Okay, so I was on
a 10-hour drive to Orlando with, toddlers.
There's
in the back
no reflection.
Is a different dynamic.
This was 100% by myself.
All right.
And, So it's 10 hours there, 10 hours back. So that what I was able to reflect on the first way, then I was able to come back
Yeah.
and
Okay.
work, but, a lot of times I may know there's an issue, and I recognize there's an issue, but I don't know how to
Yeah.
change it,
Hmm.
or recognizing is the first step. But at that point, then you've got to figure out what is it going to take to change this action, to
Yeah.
change this behavior, to change
Yeah.
whatever. And, and that is really where I want to say, don't be afraid to get help. Um, Most people can't change themselves without some guidance.
Yeah. And so, to everybody listening, if you were blessed enough to, have a mother in your youth who told you were special, she was wrong.
You're
You know
special
what?
to her. You are.
As special as we are to the people that matter, whatever you think you're battling with, millions of people battled with it, fought it,
Yep.
beat it, maybe continue to wrestle with it, but every day they can go into battle armed. And so, to your point, is like that, like you said, the first step is the recognition. And then once you acknowledge what that is, believe me, there are any number of people that have dealt with that
Yeah.
and have been able to overcome it. And so there's your resource right there. Those are the people that can help shepherd you through that.
Well, and it could be, maybe you have a spending problem. I don't. Amazon and I don't have much of a relationship at all. But anyway, but there are financial coaches out there
Yeah.
to try to help. Maybe it is, financial coach could be, just trying to get your business profitable. Maybe it is, again, leadership coaching or business coaches that just help you you may recognize that you need to get to that next level. But again, if you don't know how to do it, you're not going to get there.
Yeah.
And so, I do believe, and we plan to have a business coach on here in, sometime in the near future. So, but don't be afraid to, reach out. Sometimes it's going to cost a little money, but sometimes, there are friends that have specialties that, and strengths that you don't have, that they may even be able to help you
That's right.
get those things.
Yeah. So I guess as we wrap up here, my parting, comment to piggyback off of that is, when the shingles blow off my house, I call a roofer. When my automobile doesn't operate, I call a mechanic. When I'm sick, I go to the doctor. If there are aspects of your personality, that you're battling with, try to find that expert. At the end of the day, you will be the one who does the work, right? You can hire a personal trainer, but if you don't lift the weights and eat the food,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But it sure would help to have a personal trainer in that area. It would help to have a financial coach. It would help to have a business advisor to kind of guide you so that your effort is being manifested where you get the biggest bang for the buck.
Sure. So the best leaders surround themselves with people who bring other strengths, and that doesn't always have to be in your employment. It can be just your peers or whoever. But don't be afraid to, if you want to move forward and grow, to work on recognizing one or two of those areas, and get the people around you that can help you do that. Whether it, like I said, whether it's growing the business, becoming more profitable, or just helping you be a better leader in your own business. But
Yep. Great episode as always, Steph.
Yep. Well, we are glad to be back. I know we took a couple weeks off, but we are glad to be back and intend to be here weekly. We appreciate Keller Williams Louisville for letting us use their studio this week. So Keller Williams Louisville is one of the largest real estate groups in the area, and of course Keller Williams in the nation. So um, if you are looking to get into real estate, they offer a free real estate class, and would be happy to talk with you. So again, we appreciate their generosity of allowing us to use their studios today, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Take care.